My parents sold my house behind my back saying, "Your father and I needed the liquidity, and you're always flying around with that little advisory gig of yours." I smiled and signed the takeover documents that would make me their boss. The message had arrived just as I was stepping out of a crucial meeting in Berlin. I'd been finalizing a €47 million partnership with a German fintech firm that would position my company as the dominant player in European corporate restructuring. My phone buzzed with an email from my mother, subject line: "The house is sold." I froze in the marble lobby of the Friedrichstrasse building, my heart sinking as I read the details. 5 years of mortgage payments, renovations, and insurance premiums, all covered by me while the deed remained in their names, just until you're more settled, sweetheart. Now they'd sold my home for $340,000 without even consulting me. My name is Elena Brooks, and I'm 35 years old. For the past 11 years, I've built what my family dismisses as a little advisory gig from my base in Zurich. What they don't understand is that I'm actually the CEO of Veritas Capital, one of Europe's most aggressive acquisition firms specializing in distressed asset takeovers. I've advised governments on trillion-dollar pension fund restructurings, rescued collapsing multinational brands, and helped sovereign wealth funds recover from financial disasters. But none of that professional success mattered in that moment. My family had just stolen from me again. I called my mother immediately, struggling to keep my voice steady as she cheerfully explained their betrayal. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Elena," she sighed when I protested. "Your father and I needed the liquidity. Barton & Company hasn't been doing so well lately, and you're always flying all over Europe with that little advisory gig of yours." Little advisory gig. If only she knew that the paperwork in my briefcase represented contracts worth more than their entire company's annual revenue. If only she'd witnessed the German finance minister personally requesting my expertise on their public pension crisis just hours earlier. "Where exactly am I supposed to stay when I return?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Oh, you can stay here. Your old room is exactly the way you left it. It'll be just like when you were 17 again." As if returning to my childhood bedroom was somehow appealing. Back then, I'd endured constant comparisons to my brother Marcus, their golden boy who now served as COO of the very company they'd just admitted was failing. Back then, they'd told me to be realistic, to marry well, and to let Marcus handle the family business while I pursued something more suitable for a woman. What they never understood was that I had built everything without them, and they'd been stealing from me anyway. You see, what my family never bothered to learn about me was the true scope of my professional capabilities. While they saw a daughter who traveled frequently for work, I was actually orchestrating some of the most complex corporate acquisitions in European finance. My little firm employed 127 people across 6 countries, with offices in Zurich, Frankfurt, London, Paris, Milan, and now Berlin. More importantly, I had been methodically preparing for exactly this kind of betrayal for the past 18 months. Barton & Company, the logistics empire my parents built and worshipped, wasn't just struggling, it was in complete freefall. And I knew exactly why, because I had been systematically buying up their debt through a network of shell corporations and carefully disguised holding companies. Every overdue supplier invoice, every missed interest payment, every desperate refinancing attempt, they all quietly found their way to me. While my family dismissed me as their underachieving daughter with a modest consultancy, I had been positioning myself to acquire controlling interest in their company. My professional network included Marcus Steinberg, former Goldman Sachs managing director now heading European acquisitions, Dr. Rebecca Foster, the forensic accountant who had unraveled the Wirecard scandal, and James McCready, the restructuring lawyer who had orchestrated the Lehman Brothers asset sales. When Marcus texted me, "Mom told you about the house. Sorry, sis, but business is business," I realized they still didn't comprehend who they were dealing with. They'd used that phrase, business is business, to justify every betrayal throughout my life, when they refused to co-sign my university loans because Marcus needed seed funding for a failed startup, when they liquidated my childhood savings account to cover payroll shortfalls without telling me, when they excluded me from family business discussions because financial matters are too complex for you to understand. Now they'd sold the house I'd been paying for because their company needed cash, and they expected me to simply accept it. I replied to Marcus with a simple, "Understood," then turned to Lucas Hoffman, my Berlin legal partner. "Are the Barton acquisition contracts finalized?" I asked in fluent German, a language I'd mastered during a Frankfurt restructuring, another detail of my life they knew nothing about. "Everything is ready, Frau Brooks," he smiled. "By Friday, you'll control 78% of Barton & Company's outstanding shares." I signed the final documents with the kind of calm certainty my family had always mistaken for passivity. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a reckoning 15 years in the making. In 2 weeks, I would legally own controlling interest in Barton & Company, the very empire they had built while systematically excluding and stealing from me. The beauty of my strategy lay in its comprehensive scope. Through Veritas Capital's subsidiary networks, I had acquired not only their corporate debt, but also their key supplier relationships, their preferred banking partnerships, and even their primary insurance provider. I hadn't just positioned myself to buy their company, I had surrounded them completely. My phone buzzed constantly over the following days with increasingly frantic calls from my mother and desperate emails from Marcus. They could sense something shifting in their business landscape, but they had no idea what was coming. Let them think I was licking my wounds over a house. Let them believe I was still the disappointed daughter off in Europe with her little consultancy. They had no idea that I was about to become their boss. 2 weeks later, I stood in the executive conference room of Barton & Company's London headquarters, the same building where my father had once told me, "You'll never understand real business, Elena. It requires a certain kind of mind that women simply don't possess." The security guard had greeted me with a respectful nod. He was already on Veritas Capital's payroll, along with several key executives who had been quietly recruited over the past months. My acquisition strategy always included personnel intelligence, and I now knew exactly which employees were competent, which were loyal to my family, and which were ready to embrace new leadership. The elevator ride to the top floor stretched like an eternity as I mentally reviewed every detail of my plan. The legal documentation was perfect, the financial structures were impenetrable, and the board meeting that would change everything was scheduled to begin in exactly 12 minutes. When the doors opened, I stepped into the familiar hallway lined with portraits of the company's founders, including my grandfather, who had actually respected my business acumen before his death. I could hear my mother's anxious laughter echoing from the boardroom, where they were undoubtedly discussing the mysterious corporate takeover that was about to destroy their world. I adjusted my tailored Armani blazer and checked my Patek Philippe watch, a $45,000 timepiece I'd purchased with my last quarterly bonus, another symbol of success they'd never bothered to notice. It was time for the real Elena Brooks to be properly introduced. Just outside the boardroom, I paused to listen to their conversation. My father's voice carried his usual authoritative tone. "This has to be some kind of mistake. An unknown firm can't just sweep in and acquire Barton & Company. We've built this empire over 30 years. "I verified it 3 times, Marcus responded, his voice tight with stress. "Veritas Capital owns 78% of our stock. They've absorbed most of our debt portfolio as well. We're legally obligated to meet with their CEO this morning to discuss operational transitions." My mother chimed in with forced optimism. "Well, I'm sure it's just paperwork. We've handled worse crises. We always land on our feet as a family." That's when I opened the boardroom door. Every head turned toward me, my father's face immediately twisting with irritation. "Elena, this meeting is for board members only. Whatever tantrum you're having about the house can wait until we resolve this business crisis. I stepped forward with deliberate calm, setting my leather Hermes briefcase on the mahogany table with a quiet click that somehow commanded attention. Actually, I'm precisely on time. The CEO of Veritas Capital is scheduled to meet with you at sharp. Marcus frowned, checking his Rolex. Yes, but she's not here yet. She is here. I opened my briefcase and slid out the comprehensive documentation. I'm Elena Brooks, founder and CEO of Veritas Capital, and as of this morning, I am your majority shareholder. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's crystal water glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor in crystalline fragments that caught the morning light. My father's face drained of all color until he looked genuinely ill. Marcus stared at me like I'd transformed into someone completely unrecognizable. That's impossible, Marcus stammered. You run a boutique consultancy. You can't possibly be this corporate acquisition specialist. Can't be what exactly? I asked, tilting my head with professional curiosity. Competent? Ambitious? Too much of a disappointment to build a multinational firm right under your noses. I spread the legal papers across their conference table like playing cards in a winning hand. You'll find everything in perfect order. Veritas Capital holds majority ownership of Barton & Company, including controlling board seats, debt assumption agreements, and operational oversight authority. As of this morning, I am legally your superior in every professional capacity. My father reached for the documents with trembling hands, his voice barely above a whisper. This has to be some kind of elaborate joke. No, Dad. This is a lesson in what happens when you underestimate the wrong daughter. I kept my tone perfectly even, professional, rather than emotional, like the joke of selling my house without consultation, or liquidating my savings without permission, or maybe the joke of calling me a failure while I was building a €340 million acquisition firm under your noses. My mother tried her familiar manipulation tactics. Honey, please, we're family. Let's not destroy ourselves over business disagreements. I looked at her with perfect calm. It was never about business disagreements. You've never respected my choices or believed in my abilities, which is why I'm not destroying you. I'm offering you the same consideration you've always shown me. The board members around the table were fighting back smirks. They'd endured years of my family's arrogance and operational incompetence, watching the company slowly hemorrhage market share and profitability. Today, they were witnessing a complete power reversal. Business is business, remember? I let their favorite phrase hang in the air, watching their faces as they realized I was throwing their own words back at them. As of today, Veritas Capital is implementing comprehensive operational changes. Marcus, you're being relieved of your COO position effective immediately. His jaw dropped open. You're firing me. Dad, you're stepping down as CEO, and Mom, your position as head of communications is no longer required. I opened a personnel folder with deliberate precision. However, I'm not heartless. I'm offering you the same opportunities you provided me throughout my career. I slid 3 job descriptions across the table. Marcus, there's an opening in accounts receivable. Entry level, of course. The starting salary is £28,000 annually, which should help you understand the value of earning your position. My mother gasped audibly. Dad, we need door-to-door sales representatives for our new regional initiative. It's commission-based, so your income will depend entirely on your personal performance and work ethic. He looked physically nauseated. And Mom, the front desk could use a receptionist with excellent phone manner and organizational skills. The position offers £24,000 per year, plus basic health benefits. She burst into tears, her hands flying to cover her face. Alternatively, I continued, closing the folder with finality, you can clean out your offices by today. The choice is entirely yours. You ungrateful! My father started, his voice rising with familiar anger. I held up a single finger, and somehow that small gesture commanded absolute silence. Careful, you're speaking to your boss now, and Veritas Capital maintains strict professional standards for workplace conduct. But I wasn't finished yet. I had saved the most satisfying revelation for last. Oh, and about my house. The one you sold without my permission. I watched their faces carefully as I delivered the final blow. I bought the development company that purchased it. The deed will be transferred back to my name by tomorrow morning, along with the $67,000 profit you made from the sale. The looks of pure disbelief and dawning horror were exactly what I'd been anticipating for 18 months. After decades of being dismissed, mocked, and systematically stolen from, I had not only recovered everything they'd taken, I had multiplied it exponentially. I turned toward the remaining board members with professional authority. The quarterly review meeting will resume tomorrow at. Please have your departmental reports prepared and be ready to discuss operational improvements under new management. Then I looked over my shoulder at my family with cool satisfaction. For those of you who still maintain employment with this company, that is, the rest of you can arrange to collect personal belongings through security. I walked out of that boardroom with my head high and my power absolutely intact, no longer the invisible daughter they'd dismissed for 35 years. The echo of my heels against the marble floor was sharp and final as I left them to process their new reality. Behind me, I could hear my mother's muffled sobs, my father's angry protests, and Marcus's stunned silence. But for the first time in decades, their emotional chaos couldn't touch me. 6 months later, I'm writing this from the corner office that used to belong to my father, overlooking the London skyline from the 42nd floor of a building I now own outright. The morning newspaper sits on my desk with a headline that still makes me smile. Veritas Capital completes Barton & Company restructuring. Unknown CEO reveals family connection in boardroom coup. Marcus accepted the accounts receivable position and actually shows real potential when he applies himself. Apparently, starting at the bottom taught him work ethic our parents never instilled. My father lasted 3 weeks in sales before quitting in humiliation. He now works at a construction supply store and tells anyone who'll listen that his daughter destroyed the family over money. My mother took early retirement and spends her days writing passive-aggressive emails I delete without reading. As for my house, I kept it, but I also bought the entire residential development, converting it into executive housing for Veritas Capital's senior staff. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting back what was stolen, it's showing them exactly what they failed to see all along. Today, Veritas Capital manages 2.3 billion euros in assets across 12 countries, and I help other underestimated people navigate complex family financial situations. Because sometimes karma shows up as a hostile takeover, executed by the daughter they always said would never understand real business. Business is business, after all.